Well, I always wanted a farm, and I saw this historic farm in the Sunday newspaper under Farms for Sale. I said, what a great place, and look at the history down here. And I've always gotten into our South Carolina heritage, and this is the last place that's like this, that somebody could preserve our history instead of moving it or watching it hit the ground from rotting. To me, it's just been something I've always dreamed of, to preserve our southern heritage, what little bit's left. There's not a whole lot of National Register properties in Spartanburg County. I think there's 35 or something like that. Yeah, the Williams family had it from 1770 to 1970. They had 9 children and 7 slaves, and it was a working farm where cotton was the main crop. They had to fight the elements, cold in the winter, and the Williams acquired the property from a man named King and a man named Solomon in 1770. It was a land grant to them from King George III of England. Then a man named Kenneth Bristol bought it in 1970, and then Jack Sher bought it from him, and he had it about 7 years. He was going to turn it into a horse farm. So that, in turn, sends me to being the 5th owner since King George III granted the property. And then there's a cattle barn, and then there's a hay and grain barn. It's late 1800s, early 1900s. And then on the other side of the driveway is a chicken barn. That was our 12th restoration. The cookhouse, like I said, Floride told me, she was the last of the Williams that lived in the house. She told me it was built in 1770. And it's the only building that has a shooting hole notched in the logs where they still have probably the Cherokee. And then they built a smokehouse to where they smoked their meat and store their meat. And the blacksmith shop where they made all their ironworks and hand-cut nails. And there was a kiln in the blacksmith shop where they made their urns and churns and handmade bricks. And as their family outgrew the cookhouse and they started constructing the big main house that we live in, they eventually had 9 children and 5 slaves, and they built a small house across the lake around 1820 for one of his eldest sons when he got old enough to get married and have his own family. That's what I can get out of the records. He had 2 slaves over there. So that gave him a total of 9 children and 7 slaves. And there were 3 wells on the place, all of them rock lined all the way to the bottom. There was one at the small house, one in front of the cattle barn, and then one in front of the main house. When we were redoing the main house, I found a Civil War era canister that contained musket balls, and I found chunks of blue rock and yellow rock, which is sulfur and saltpeter, where they were making their own gunpowder. Found an old mouse trap in the house. We found 2 spear points in between the logs of the cookhouse and the store building. And Florrie told me her and her sister Margaret found them in the bottoms when they were gardening or farming, and they placed them in between the logs for somebody to find, and I told her I found your airheads that y'all put up in there. We found some coins with a metal detector out in the yard, half dimes, found 2 half dimes and some old mercury dimes, and found a front axle off a toy wagon made out of wood that had wooden wheels on it in the smokehouse. They positioned all these buildings, they call them shotgun houses, where the doors open where the sun comes up and it opens where the sun sets. It keeps them warm in the wintertime. Yeah, how they survived back then in the winter times, beyond me. Bed warmers and hot coals under the mattress stuff, rope bed. If you keep them in the dry, keep them on the rocks, keep the roofs intact, they'll be here for another 270 years or 2,000 years.